Welcome to Silver Linings March episode, and as you can see, I'm just a little bit different today, and we're having a tea, and we are super excited to have our guest here today, Carle, and I can't wait to tell you about her. She is going to be joining us for our tea today. So Carle has been working in theater for over 30 years as an actress, as a singer, a dancer, and a director in the U.S. and abroad. That's like so my jam. I'm like so excited.
I can tell you've come prepared.
I did. I came prepared.
And I'm so excited to have her here too.
Yes. And like performing Shakespeare to musical comedy, and I have to tell you, I saw her perform and I loved it. So I'm so excited that she's here with us today. And just a little bit about what we were going to talk about today. So Kandie is and has a passion for history, culture, and social reflection as the Victorian lady. And hence we are Victorian garb today. And you may have seen some of her performances, as I did with actual AT. But she is also does a variety of other programs that we will discuss with her. And she's also the performing artistic director of the East Haddam Theater Company. And you may have seen some of their work as they are the resident theater company at the Gillette Castle State Park, which I actually saw a performance this summer. Nice. How cool is that? So please, let's welcome Carle to join us for tea.
Hi, ladies.
Hello.
It's so nice to see you.
Nice to see you. We're excited you are here, and certainly ready to talk about, the Victorian times.
Oh, the Victorian times.
Yes. So first question certainly is,
well, it's probably an obvious one. How did you start this Victorian lady performance?
Yeah, the starting of any kind of performance always has some root in a personal experience. And mine was with my grandmother on my 12th birthday. She had given me a beaded bag that had belonged to her mother. And I thought this was cool. It came all the way from Czechoslovakia. I was 12. I couldn't spell Czechoslovakia, but I thought it was cool. She also gave me a stack of photographs, the black and white and shades of gray tintype photographs. You probably have some of your own ancestors. And she started telling me the stories about their lives, because they looked nothing like her, nothing like me. We're wearing jeans and t-shirts, and they were wearing not jeans and t-shirts. But she explained to me these were not costumes. These were actually what they wore every day. And so that planted the seed for the love of all things much older than myself. And then when I got into musical theater and theater, etc., and finally moved out here to Connecticut in '92, and my husband and I have been in the performing arts all our adult lives. So it's how we make a living, it's what we do. And I auditioned for and got into the Vintage Dance Society of Connecticut, which has a performance arm, Polite Society. And when we do our performances or demonstrations or host balls, we're dressed appropriate. And that means you have to wear the corsetry, you have to wear the garments that are not just made over prom dresses. And so I got to engage my other love is sewing and creating, etc. And so I made my gowns for the different time periods we portray. And after our performances, most people wanted to know not about the polka, the mazurka, or the waltz. They wanted to know, what are you wearing underneath all of that?
That's right. Yes.
And so that launched me. I said, well, I'll show you. I have no problem showing you.
That's a little personal, don't you think?
Well, yes, and my programs are sometimes referred to as a reverse strip tee, because I don't strip, I put layers on. And I begin in the underwear, not my underwear, their underwear, and I'm more covered than most young ladies are at the prom, so I'm good with that.
I can vouch for that because I saw you at the tea, and one of the things you said is, I'm probably wearing more clothes right now, just in my undergarments, than you are sitting at the chair. And that is so true. So
Love that
certainly
so much.
one thing that comes to mind, how long does it take you to get dressed?
Well,
Because there are layers and layers.
Yes. During my programs, I'm talking throughout and I'm fielding questions from the audience, et cetera. But for instance, today, it took me about 20 minutes. Dressing from the inside out, doing the hair, it's what I'm used to doing. I've been doing this since 96, 97. And so it's just like us. We get up in the morning and we put on our regular clothes. We don't have to think a lot about it. But as you know, when you are dressing in a different time period, sometimes you need assistance. And so I chose this particular outfit. I made this Gilded Age 1890s outfit predominantly so I could get into it and out of it myself.
Okay.
And I'm more or less successful, depending. I hope all my hooks and eyes are where they're supposed to be. But it is about 20 minutes from top to bottom, which if I did it every day, I could probably pare that down to like 15.
And that's even impressive. And are you really wearing a corset?
I am really wearing a corset. Yes, I am. This particular corset is a very lightweight corset. It has flat metal bones and a steel busk up the center and laces up the back. And it's more of like the daytime kind of corset, because keep in mind we have undergarments that we like to wear just with our jeans, and then we've got undergarments that, oh, we're going to wear our Victoria's Secret undergarments under our cocktail dress. So that's one of the things that is always so fascinating to me is the stereotypes. And one of the things I love to do is myth busting in my programs, because I can sing, I can dance. The corset has to fit you. The problem is we don't grow up with one, and so we put one on today, and all of a sudden, oh my gosh, I can't breathe. Well, the reason you can't breathe is because it doesn't fit you properly. You've been to Home Depot, Lowe's, even the grocery stores, and you see the guys wearing the black rubberized back brace. They're very supportive. You can't slouch, you can't slump. I recently, because I also have a Jane Austen program, I recently was out in Colorado for the annual general meeting there, and I challenged myself to go through 4 days of the conference dressed in Regency with those stays on. They were not quite what we refer to as a corset, but I did. I managed, and there were people who were saying, you have such great posture. I'm like, well, that's because.
That's really, I love the way you made that comparison
Yes.
to what we see today, because it's probably really true and why we're always slouching.
Yes.
So maybe you just answered this question, but maybe you didn't. What item in the Victorian era is most misrepresented? Is it the
There's a number of things that are misrepresented when we think back on it, not only because we have a tendency to do projection onto items what we would use them for today.
Sure.
And we misinterpret how they were used at the time. There were people who took to the extremes, as you can see in this wonderful
Yes.
This is an ad from a company in London, and you can see the gentlemen are wearing corsetry as well. So boys, girls, men, women all wore a form of undergarment, supportive undergarment. Now, was that everybody? No, there are some people, especially Oscar Wilde and some other people during the Victorian era, that were trying to get back into that Grecian feel of freedom and loose and you know, all that. But most of the people were not having any of that. They wanted to snatch in their waist, they wanted to have an uplifted bosom, and they wanted the rounded hips. And well, just like today, we've got Botox and silicone and 6-inch heels, and
Yeah.
every age has what they're willing to suffer through, I guess, in order to be fashionable for the time period that they're in. So
Yes, and you sent us a few other photos. So here's like a different one.
I love this one because it's the dowager. And what that basically means is you're not a young lady, 18, 19, 20 years old. They know that you're a more substantial woman now. And so they have a more substantial corset. The fact that they call it the dowager, it's like the queen mom kind of thing.
Okay.
I giggle, I laugh, because of course today we don't see women in their 40s as being dowagers. 80's the new 40 kind of thing today. But yes, I even have with me here a little corselet.
And I'll hold it up.
Yeah, and show the back side as well. This does not come undone. It slips over the child's head, and it tightens or
Unbelievable.
loosens, and it has little tabs to hold up stockings. And this was actually given to me by someone who came to my show, and she found it in the attic of her great aunt's house, and they think it's from the Strauss Adler corset manufacturer, which launched in New Haven in 1852.
Wow.
And so Connecticut has quite the history of corset making.
And I never first knew that a man wore a corset. You never see that in the movies now. And I would have never thought that they would put a little child in a corset.
Yeah, the difference was that, for the most part, children were seen as adults in training. And we could use a little bit more of that today. But this is very flexible. It only has the 2 bones down the back of the spine, because keep in mind, they were dealing with all kinds of things, polio, scarlet fever, all kinds of things that we can address now that once you had them, you were an invalid. And so they wanted their children to grow up with very good posture, very straight spine. They thought it was the healthy way to grow. The only difference between us and them is that we don't grow up wearing supportive undergarments. So then when we put one on, it feels foreign and you struggle against it. Same thing for me. I mean, I was a dancer all my life, and when I started doing vintage dance in a corset, I had to make adjustments and realize that you have to relax. It becomes your exoskeleton. It supports you from the outside. So I'm actually, can you tell, more relaxed now than I would be if I was trying to sit here keeping my posture erect without it.
Right.
I love that perspective.
Wow.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's exactly what it is, perspective.
Well, we have push-up bras now.
And you had a couple other corset photos.
Yes, as you can see, there were children. The top there you see a Ferris Good corset. That's a little boy. And he's wearing something very similar to the one I brought with me. And then there's the young ladies down below. And as you can see, as they grow up, the shape shifts. It goes from straight up and down to a little bit of contours, and then whatever the fashionable shape is at the time.
Okay.
And that's where you get the eventual hourglass. And again, when you're growing, if you cinch too tight, then yes, you're going to have issues. If you're not a healthy individual to begin with, you might have issues. But on the whole, if you grow up wearing a supportive undergarment like that, one of the reasons it lasted so long, well into the 20th century for a number of people, is because to go without it feels uncomfortable. And you feel very,
Wow. Very interesting.
I do not feel.
No.
No, not at all.
And I think there was one more picture that you had sent us too.
Oh, there.
Yes, the wonderful maternity corsets.
Ah.
This is another thing that people are so surprised about. But if you go to a medical supply place, or you have, my mother, for instance, had twins, and there's supportive belts for that, and there's all kinds of things that are now rubberized or elasticized. Well, as you can see in this image, it had all the lacing down the sides, so it could increase, decrease as needed, and also they had a variety of them with straps. They even had nursing corsets, and again, you cannot have 10 years of your life from the age of 12 until, you're 20-ish, etc., wearing a supportive undergarment and then go without it for 9 months.
Right.
Because
a lot of
these
sense,
muscles are not going to, they're not getting a good workout. So-
Transitional, yeah.
Exactly.
Makes sense.
And we
Makes
have
sense.
one more photo of corsets.
Here's the thing that drives those of us in the history field absolutely bonkers. Ever since we've had the availability of websites and surfing, etc., I cannot tell you how many overreactions there are to these photographs. And people say, oh my gosh, she must have been fainting all the time. Look at her waist. Well, it's photoshopping. It's photoshopping. And as you can see in this image, the final on the left-hand side is not what she started with.
Yes.
And you can really tell if something's been retouched if you see a blank behind them, any kind of blank behind them. Much easier to retouch if there's a blank behind them than there is flowers or curtains or something like that. Many, many photographs have been altered.
Yeah.
And so I beg people, don't automatically assume that you're going to trust what you see. We have it today. I don't know about you guys. I tend to get rid of my under eye bags in my photos with that lovely little eraser we have in Photoshop. So that is nothing new. It's been going on for a long time.
Wow.
Oh, good to know.
Yeah, one fun thing that we had talked about too was how just women dressed in certain ways. And one of the things that we had talked about was the swimsuits.
I love this. Another thing that gets misinterpreted a lot is, oh, as you can see, I'm covered from head to toe. Well, you know, it's March. It might be a little cooler, so I've got my furs, but March is also spring, so maybe we're going into spring. But I'm covered from head to toe, especially in the summer, not because, oh my gosh, my ankles should not show. There's no sunscreen. You use your parasol as best you can. If you're going to go to the seaside, you're going to get burnt to a crisp unless you cover up. That's why they've got the long stockings and they wear their shoes. And I do have a number of photos and a little video clip on my website for because someone actually dared me. I dressed, I was out at Martha's Vineyard doing a program and they wanted a seaside look, and so I made my wonderful 1895-ish swimming outfit with the cap and the whole everything, and I was wearing a supportive undergarment because for sporting activities, equestrian, they still wore their corsetry, and they dared me to go out into the ocean, and it was great. Getting in the ocean was great, swimming in the ocean was great, floating in the ocean was great. Getting out of the water was a little bit more difficult than I
Because you
anticipated.
maybe were so much heavier?
I was so much heavier. I wanted to stay in the water. But yeah, you're covered from head to toe because you don't want to get burned. So look at, especially, you know, HBO or Max has actually the Gilded Age series going on. And you'll notice that during the daytime, they're covered head to toe. And in the evening, that décolletage just goes way down. So keep those kinds of things in mind as well.
Okay.
Awesome. That's really good to know.
Yes.
Well, we've talked about there. Let's talk about these fabulous hats.
Yes.
For sure.
Hats in the latter part of the Victorian era became really into vogue. They were saying goodbye to the bonnets. The bonnets were tied under the chin. Bonnets were, covered your hair. Bonnets had a brim, etc. So in watering places in the 1850s and 1860s, you would have wide brim, what we call picture hats, big brim hats like this. Okay. And then, but for everyday wear, they'd still wear a bonnet. And the transition happened when hairstyles changed. In the 1870s, they had massive amount of hair piled up. And I'm going to show you how you get your massive amount of hair. So this is actually a hair receiver. And it's a decorative dish with a hole in the lid. And this hole in the lid allows you to gather your hair, and then you tease it or rat it up like this. You plunk that in, you wrap your hair around it, and voila, you've got twice as much hair as you started with. I actually have a rat in my hair. And I'm going to go ahead and take my lovely cap off. And they also started really enjoying things like hair combs. I have this one. This is a new acquisition that I just got. It's called a hair pin, even though it's not a bobby pin or something to fasten your hair. It was to decorate your hair. But these are the kinds of things that were very popular. And they started having hats only for the daytime, and in the evening, they wouldn't wear bonnets or hats. They would decorate their hair. So you got this influx of all kinds of decorative things for your hair, which is just fabulous. But hats were very, very important.
Very nice. Awesome.
Now, interesting fact, we were going to bring mismatched sets, but Dina and I decided, okay, I'm going to bring my partial set, and Dina brought her cups, and it became, brought us into this thought process that, okay, well, why did this custom start where we're picking china patterns when we're getting married, right? And it's been going on for a while. Can you give us just a little bit of a history on that?
The history of tea and the importation of tea and taxes on tea and the Boston Tea Party and et cetera, et cetera. The lengthy history of tea in general is amazing. This was one of those things that brides would get so they could host parties at their house. You would take tea in the afternoon. You would say, hello, Silver Linings, I'm coming in on a Friday afternoon and we're going to sit down and have tea. Well, you'd have to bring out your tea set.
Yes.
So it was a sign of wealth to have a matching complete set.
Okay.
It was also very much a status symbol if you had the finer bone china, if you had the nicer things, which were the ones that were gifted. If we were going to go out and buy our own coffee mug, it's not going to look the same as that really nice mug that, we get from family members. But it's a very civilized, mannerly way of actually having a snack.
So it really was more about the tea set, not about the china.
Yes.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Okay, so I'm going to use my tea set a little more often.
I love
Yes,
that.
please do. Please use your tea sets and those beautiful glasses that you get. We tend to not do that so much anymore, give complete sets of things, because so many people are already living together and have what they need. But it is a really nice thing to have. So your next Mother's Day or spring event or, summer picnic, bring out your tea set.
I love it.
Oh, awesome.
I actually had a bridal tea as one of my bridal things before I got married, which was very nice. And it was teacups and all of that. And that was very cool. So I was wondering, has there been anything else that people are really surprised to learn about the Victorian times? Like I was surprised about men wearing corsets and little ones wearing corsets.
And the fact that people are dressed from neck to toe because it's, protection more than modesty.
Yes.
They were obviously more modest than we are. It took the First World War to give that knee-jerk reaction. The world changed exponentially after the First World War. Wars tend to do that anyway, but generationally speaking, and garments and ways of, they hacked their hair. Downton Abbey did a really good job of showing that transition. That was a really important element to that storytelling, going from the First World War into that more emancipated, I am getting rid of this and
shorter
the shorter bob.
Yes.
I'm going to wear lighter clothes. So this structure of the 1890s, the late Victorian era, the hourglass figure really just disappeared. It started getting slimmer and slimmer, and pretty soon, after the austerity of wartime, where it was tweed suits and wool and cotton, and they decided, well, we're going to go for silk and beads now. So then you get into the 1920s, and you don't want to see me in any of that stuff. I am way too curvy. You put me in a 1920s outfit, and I look like a box walking. It's just,
That's so funny.
but yeah, there's transitions throughout decades. And of course, we can't go into the 1920s and the emancipation of the visual without going into, obviously, the women getting the vote in 1919. And one of the sad things about COVID is so many of us were gearing up for the fabulous 100th anniversary of women getting the vote in 2020, and we all know what happened there.
Yeah, me too.
So it was very difficult to see that go by the wayside. Yeah. But again, as this is another election year, I cannot encourage everybody enough to honor those women who went before. Women who looked like me right now could not vote. They did not have a voice. And many of them, if they married, everything they own now belonged to their husband.
Right.
Period.
true.
End of sentence. So we need to look back on that and go, wow. And they managed to fight the good fight and get us the vote. So I have my voting pin on. But words, are meaningful, but the button says deeds, not words. You got to follow up your words with actually getting out there and vote.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
And I loved hearing that too, was that during the Victorian time is when this was beginning. And they kind of created the path for the women who really solidified the vote for women.
They absolutely
Yes,
did.
there were some suffragettes too. There were some men who we were talking about, being surprised about some gentlemen. When I was doing my research, I was really surprised to find out how many men were behind the women here in Connecticut. Isabella Beecher Hooker, her husband, John Hooker, was a lawyer, and they actually were at the forefront of getting women the vote and property rights here in the state of Connecticut. And they were just at the forefront as a team, as partners. So it wasn't just women. There were some gentlemen, and many of whom were using this.
What is that?
This is a teeny tiny, itsy bitsy little curling iron.
Oh my goodness.
But it is not for itsy bitsy teeny tiny little curls. This is for a gentleman's mustache.
Oh.
Yes, so gentlemen had their ways of looking appropriate as well, and facial hair was so important they even had little curling irons. And I have to tell you, I got this in New Paltz, New York. I go antiquing all over the place. And this had a tag on it that said, baby curling iron. I'm like, okay, clearly whoever put that on there has no children, because you're not going to put a hot metal thing next to a baby's head. I'm just saying.
Right.
I love the fact that you just have so much to share.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the programs that you do offer as a living history performer?
And can we show the photos that you sent us, because I think that they're going to reflect the different programming.
Yes, I started doing the 1890s and the 1860s, my mid-Victorian, the big hoop, the Civil War era. And then, about 5-6 years into, it became such a big part of my performance life that I added the Edwardian, early 1900s, and then there was a request for all things Jane Austen. And so I created a Regency program, I call it Fashion and Fiction, where I have the two dress forms. One is Elizabeth Bennet and the other one is Mr. Darcy, and I dress them as they're going to the ball. So I have mid-Victorian 1860s where I dress from the inside out, 1890s, which is reflected there in that photo, and then I have Edwardian, these days known as Downton Abbey, and then go back 100 years prior to that to the Regency federal period here in the United States.
Great. So I want to end with us showcasing your photos, but before that, just where could someone reach out if they want to know where you're performing?
On my website, kandiecarle.com, we have a calendar page, and any shows that are open to the public would be listed there.
Okay,
so that's the place to look.
Great.
Wonderful.
And I just love seeing all these photos in different dress. to
Yeah, that's my
represent different
Regency.
time periods.
Yeah.
So we can just roll right through them.
Yeah, and there's the Edwardian, early 1900s. Some are whites. And there's Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth Bennet, who I dress. And you can see I'm wearing my stays there, too. And these outfits, almost all of these, including the gentleman's tailcoat, I've made myself.
Wow.
I love doing the research. I love reading everyday people's stories. And I may look really dressed up today, but I'm just like you guys, everyday middle class. If this was made out of silk and all of that, and jet beads and all that, but this is just your nice go-to-tea with your friends outfit from the 1890s, the Gilded Age.
Well, thanks for joining us for tea today.
You're welcome.
And sharing all of this fabulous knowledge.
You're welcome.
Especially the reminder about what women did
Yes.
in the Victorian age to get us to
Yes.
the ability
And
to
there
vote.
you are.
There's
And
the-
there we are, votes for women. Yay! Yay!
And it goes along beautifully with that it is the month of March and it's Women's History Month.
Women's History Month. And of course, every month should be Women's History Month. But yes, please honor the women in your life, and please honor the women that went before that had to go through a lot of struggles to get us the freedoms that we have today.
And I highly recommend anyone to reach out to find out your programming and where you are performing, because it's just such a wonderful time. Thank you for being here with
You're
us.
welcome.